This life is a movie, and the purpose of life is to turn around and see the projector. So much of the modern mindfulness movement is focusing on mindfulness as a thing that I do, and it doesn't really point us to the total connectivity of our lives. It's not a path out of the world. It's a path deeply into the world. And I think this is a really important flavor of Zen. Now, can I tell you a quick story, personal? When I began the path of meditative training nearly 40 years ago, I had no idea you don't need to have practiced in order to have realization or awakening. It's so easy for us to think it's down the road, but it can't be. There is only now. But also, I think it's really true. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. In other words, the pain of heartbreak can open the heart. And when the heart is open, we're really alive.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Know Thyself podcast. Our guest today is an authorized teacher in the Sambo Zen lineage. He is a poet, a novelist, creator of the Way app, and an incredible voice in the space of Zen. Henry Shukman, thank you for being here.
It's great to be with you, Andre.
Your voice has an incredible sound, especially for guided meditations. I am looking forward to having this episode be a solid introduction into the world of Zen, which I think has become quite commercialized. That term, however catchy it is, has been put on many different packages as a branding for well-being. And I would love to dive deep with you today. So to start very simply, what is Zen?
Yeah, that's a great question that Zen itself has been trying to answer for thousands of years, because the heart of it is unnameable. But at the same time, it's this very moment exactly as it is right now. So Zen, in a slightly less obscure way of putting it, it's one of the many forms of Buddhism. It's a form of Buddhism that has got Taoism in it as well. And what that means in practical terms is that among the various kinds of Buddhism that there are, Tibetan, Theravada, Vipassana, and so on, many, many forms of Buddhism actually, Zen, I think it's fair to say, is the simplest. Simplest in the sense that there's very little kind of extraneous material. You don't have a lot of beliefs. There aren't, pantheons of bodhisattvas and Buddhas and sort of semi-divine and divine entities. It all comes down to the practice. That's really what Zen focuses on. And the practice is, number one, meditation as the growth point, as what allows us to grow as humans. And number two, life, ordinary daily life as a kind of extension of the meditation. And in a way, Zen almost doesn't really want to exist. And there's a view that when we really get Zen deeply, Zen kind of self-destructs. Like Mission Impossible tape, it vanishes. When we really get the message, what it's trying to communicate, it's kind of not there anymore. The Zen part is not there anymore. So I don't know, that's probably rather obscure, but that's...
No, that's direct. How would you articulate the goal of Zen and Zen practice? What is the promise that it brings?
Yeah, so I got to acknowledge there are different kinds of Zen. Yeah. Okay, so they'd probably all answer that differently.
Yeah.
In the school that I've trained in, mostly, Sambo Zen, they're fairly explicit about it. There's the hope, there's the possibility that we can go through a radical realization where we discover that what we've been all along is not invalidated, but it's a small part of the overall picture. That, the sense of I being basically inhabiting this skin bag, this particular body,
Meat suit.
Right, exactly. That this is not what I am fundamentally. Yeah, I totally, this body, mind, heart, this is what I think of as me. But at the same time, the sense of this body being separate from all else is an illusion. And it's actually possible for us humans, and many traditions recognize this, of course, it's possible to recognize a much deeper self that is all-inclusive, that is timeless, that is spaceless, that is infinite, that has always been here and is unnameable, actually. There is no word for it, but you can experience it. And Zen, as I've known it, trusts that all of us can recognize that. And, we call it awakening, or realization, or recognition. Some might call it enlightenment, but I don't know, we're a little tentative with that word because it sounds quite grand. But we can recognize it, and it's often a turning point in a life to do so. But that's really, in a way, stage one, because the next part is, how do we live it? How do we manifest what we've realized in our daily life? And that's in a way, that's more important, So that would be a very headline, top line level of stating what it's all about for Zen.
Yeah, we'll dive deeper into the iceberg that's under the water, so to speak. But for a bit more context in terms of the origination of Zen before it kind of bifurcated into many different disciplines, could you give us the spark notes of how it came from India to China to Japan and the many different forms it took? What's just like the overview of how it came to be?
Yeah, totally. So there's history and there's a bit of mythology, and they're really hard to tease apart. But basically, so Buddhism develops, in 4th or 5th century BCE in northern India with Shakyamuni Buddha and Siddhartha Gautama and his rigors and his training and his realization of the middle way and his coming to a profound awakening, becoming the Buddha, the awakened one. And in Zen's view, the heart of what he realized got transmitted or transferred from India to China in about 500 or 527 officially, they reckon, in CE, the Common Era. And it was this figure called Bodhidharma, who is said to have sort of brought the practice of Zen Buddhism, which was called Dhyana Buddhism. This is their view. It's really about meditation Buddhism. Rather than lots of practices and liturgy and sutra study, doctrinal study, just the core practice of sitting still as a human being. That was brought from India to China. This is the Zen official biography kind of thing, in around 527 CE by Bodhidharma. In China, Bodhidharma, there's various adventures and episodes in his life, but the fundamental one was that he sat for 9 years on his own in a cave. And that was how he planted this Zen form of Buddhism in China. This is all, legend / history, something. And out of Bodhidharma's practice, he had various disciples, and they started to spread this form of Buddhism. There had already been Buddhism coming into China, and probably actually really Zen was the culmination of that process over several centuries. But I think it emerged as a kind of distinctive expression of Buddhism probably around 600, which is founded on this real simplicity that you don't need a lot of beliefs, you don't need doctrine. In the end, you don't even need scripture, sutras. You just need to examine your own experience. And you can come to know it in a new way. You can come to understand the relationship between me and the world in a radically different way that relieves a lot of the pains of the human heart. And it allows our hearts actually to grow exponentially and be much more open. And we will be concerned and motivated by compassion for the sufferings in this world. So it's not a kind of, withdrawal. It's very much about an deeper engagement with the world coming out of the realization that we can have. Sorry, is that actually I could carry on. I got it to China, but then it spreads. It spreads to Japan, it spreads to Korea, it spreads to Vietnam. There are other forms of Zen that are exist to this day that are not. This is not just the Japanese expression of it. In China they called it Chan, actually. So it's and like I said earlier, it's got a mix in it of Taoism, which has perhaps more emphasis on. As a result of that mixture, there's more emphasis on, say, artistic expression. One of the things that attracted me to Zen as a poet, as a writer, was that it has such a great, rich history of poetry, of landscape painting, of calligraphy, and of tea ceremony. It's got these artistic expressions kind of woven into its history. And as a, 20th, 21st century writer and poet, for me, that was like a natural kind of meeting ground that I found in Zen that I wouldn't have found so strongly in other kinds of practice.
Do you think that's in part your sort of inherent resistance to authority and tradition? There's something beautiful about the directness of the path and how it doesn't require often parsing through a lot of dogmatic language or even tradition in times to just sit with the directness of the experience it's offering.
That is exactly right. Yeah. And, I grew up in a fairly convention-bound culture already in the UK, back in the 60s and 70s when I was a kid. England was still quite, it was quite a kind of conformist, convention-based kind of society compared to, say, California or something at the same time. And I didn't need to adopt another one. I didn't want to go into another set of cultural trappings. I actually really wanted something that could meet, my own experience directly, and wasn't exactly as you say. It wasn't going to require kind of a whole slew of doctrinal study, which is really kind of adopting yet another culture. I didn't really want that. I thought it, and Zen didn't offer that. It was just about meeting human experience directly, this very moment, coming back to it again and again,
I would love to fast forward and jump straight into the heart of your work, your most recent book, Original Love, and the premise of what that is, because I think that we have culturally programmed the opposite, that we are fundamentally sinful creatures in the Western Abrahamic faiths, at least the way they position it.
Yeah.
So what is the proposition, not only of the Zen tradition in which you share, but of so much of your work about who we are?
Yeah. I mean, what I've come to find, and is that we got our surface sense of self that's trying to manage its existence in the world. Underneath that, we've got a kind of a deeper soul self that has a calling, and that is kind of wired to grow and wants to grow and loves to grow and loves enriching experiences and loves love, and is fearless, and that's beautiful. But deeper still, there's what is sometimes called original nature or fundamental nature, and that's what I really mean by original love. It's a discovery that we're not separate. We're not separate from anything. That there's a different order of experience, always right here, where, at the same time, we're exactly who we think we are, this body, this mind, this heart, but we're also, boundless, timeless, infinite, and without size, without dimension, without history, without future, although history and future are allowed, but fundamentally they're just happening now. And in this kind of primordial present moment, because we're not separate in any way, because we're part of a great reality that is all-inclusive, it's like love. To find it is like discovering an ultimate belonging. And it just fills the human heart with relief and joy and love to know it. And it also can reorient us to lives of love and service and compassion. Probably always imperfectly, but it can make that reorientation happen. So, man, it's not just an original nature, it's an original love. That's what I feel. So, yeah, to bring that back to the notion of original sin, I don't accept that fundamentally, we're wrong, defective, bad, and that we've got to be redeemed from that. I actually just don't believe that. I think maybe superficially we could use some help, and certainly I have done and continue to actually, and I think this is an important point. But deep down, what we are is already, an infinite, boundless, nameless reality, one of whose aspects is unconditional love. So that's a long answer, but that's really what I think it comes down to, an unconditional love that is in our deepest nature. And finding that is the journey of a lifetime. And it's such an amazing thing to get to know that this isn't some thing I've achieved because of my arduous, self-mortification or my rigorous spiritual practice. It's always been here. It's not an accomplishment.
Yeah. I think an amazing doorway into starting to glimpse that nature, our true nature for ourselves, which is the most important, instead of, studying in a book, reading it, hearing it in a podcast, is first off to examine how scattered our minds are. And I think a lot of us understand the notion of bodies that are in shape, that are fit. We have full industries, multi-billion-dollar industries focused on getting people in shape, from the gyms to the wellness institutions. And we get that, but the mind, because it's more invisible in nature, we don't understand that it needs the same level of attention, especially this day and age, maybe even more so. They're fundamentally connected. But what is the connection there, you think, between working with the mind, our identification with our thoughts, and then deeper on the path, getting to glimpse our true original nature? But start us a bit earlier on the journey. Most of us feel really swayed and identified with this voice in our head.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. No, well, I think, in my book, Original Love, actually, I parse out these 4 main areas of development that we can go through in our spiritual lives. And of course, this could be sliced and diced many ways. I totally acknowledge that. But I think these 4, I call them inns, like refuges. I think they are a reasonable way of looking at it. And the first is mindfulness, and mindfulness means becoming aware of what's actually going on around me and within me. And most of us, and myself totally included, when I began the path of meditative training, nearly 40 years ago, I had no idea that I was actually listening to a voice in my head so much of my waking hours. And it was not a very friendly, kind, supportive, helpful voice. It was doing, a lot of like, you got to do this, you failed at that, you're no good, and this is awful, and all that kind of, disturbing language was going on. And even when it wasn't disturbing, it was still chattering away, commenting, and, a running commentary. To become aware of that is a big shift, because the moment we notice, oh, I'm aware, here I am aware, and there's this voice, that's already created a little bit of a gap between me and the voice. Whereas previously, just exactly as you said, Andre, I've been totally identified with it. That somehow this voice is me being me. Well, it's not. It's thought arising in a verbal form, which happens a lot for a lot of the time for a lot of people. So becoming mindful allows us to be aware of that voice and to have a little break from it, gap from it, distance from it, and space around it. Mm. And we start to find that we can actually inhabit that space rather than the voice. Mm. It's a great relief.
I think such a liberating aspect of that is when you start to have some distance in between you and your thoughts and emotions, you feel more free in your life. And so much of what we thought we were going to externally gain and would be the cause of our freedom externally, whatever sort of arrangements, career, relationships, whatnot, we can approach those things less under the illusion they're going to provide us the solace we once thought they would.
Yeah.
And so let's keep going down these ends. So what would be the next in, so to speak?
Yeah. Can I just add something to that? Because
no.
It's like we get so locked into this world before us, and we're so preoccupied with it. And then when we stop doing something, we get preoccupied with the cloud of thoughts that come up. So it's finding that actually we can let go a little bit. We can put down the tasks, we can put down the thoughts, and there's this great space. So that's right on. Okay. Second in is, it's about, really, I needed to state this. It's about support and connection. And I needed to state it because so much of the modern mindfulness movement is focusing on mindfulness as a thing that I do. It's just for me, and it's just my own sole responsibility. And it doesn't really point us to the total connectivity of our lives, that we're already in a great field of connections and of support. That we look at a human body, all the factors that have to come together for a human being to exist. All of that is a form of support and infinite connection, allowing us just to exist. Then we've all got families. We may have varying relationships with them, but we are part of a family. We're also part of the whole human family. We're also, nourished every minute by breath, by the food we take in, by the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the earth we stand on. All of that, and the warmth that we need, constantly, every moment of our lives, we're actually bearing the fruit of so much support. We're expressing so much support that is making us exist. So to be acknowledging that seemed to me really important. So mindfulness too is not an isolated solo pursuit. It's not like me just going to the gym and doing reps, It's actually helping me recognize that I'm part of infinite networks and that I'm not alone. And that's why in the old traditional Buddhist view, there was practice. Doing your practice is critical. But so was community, what they call Sangha. It's the third refuge. And there's places where the Buddha said, he was asked, is Sangha, like, I've heard you say, Buddha, somebody said to him, Ananda said to him, one of his disciples, I've heard you say that Sangha is half of the holy life. Would you agree with that? No. Sangha is the whole of the holy life. It's all about community and connection. So for us to just remember that's why the second in is in. And that is in my scheme and my book, Original Love. And also, by the way, on the app, we work through these ins, we call them zones in the app, in the same way. But let me just say that is not only in the visible and kind of material level of connections we have with friends and guides and coaches and whatever, therapists, whatever we might have, and teachers, mentors. It's also in a kind of less tangible form as well, I believe, which some call the archetypal realm. Shamanism can take us to it. Dream work can take us to it. Meditation actually can open us up to more receptivity to a kind of archetypal, imaginal realm, as some call it, which is a little bit like Jung's collective unconscious, where there's levels of connectivity that we don't see, but we're truly part of. And I think that's really important. I feel it's like soul work, recognizing a deeper part of ourselves that has, as I said earlier, has its calling in this world, in this life, and wants to grow. And this art comes from it, and self-expression of different kinds. I think that's a really important side of our spiritual lives. And we don't want to get too sterile, like kind of slightly dry mindfulness, no, it's a rich thing, So that would be the second in. Yeah.
Amazing. We'll keep riding the train. What's the third stop?
Yeah, the third stop is like it's actually it's what Buddhism calls samadhi, or sometimes translated concentration. I don't think that's a good translation myself. It's more like absorption. And it's when we get into flow states, basically. It could be flow states from activities, but it can also be if we have a practice of meditation. In meditation, you can drop into these really beautiful flow-like states where, and even novice meditators will know this, where, we're used to finding it a bit of a grind, kind of hard. And what am I supposed to do? Follow my breath? I can't do that. Be aware of the present moment. Oh no, I'm just lost in thought. But then we'll suddenly get these moments when we don't exactly know how or why, but suddenly we're clear, we're calm. Experience is very rich and beautiful. And it's like we're effortlessly doing the practice. We're suddenly, oh my gosh, this is what it's all about. I never knew I could find this clear, free, easy awareness that's really attentive. That's samadhi, that's flow states in meditation, and it's beautiful.
What are jhanas? And so how does that go in here?
Yeah, they fall into this category. Jhana states are it's a set of slightly different flavors of absorption that you can learn to bring on in meditation. There are some subtle, kind of slightly technical methods for getting into jhana states, which are progressively more refined and powerful states of absorption.
Would you rank them? I suppose it's futile to, but like on levels of deepness or profoundness of experience. I'm curious to hear maybe it relates to your own personal experience in altered states, but what are a sample platter of these different states one might find themselves in as they do this work?
Yeah, well, I've got to say right off the bat that I believe these are real natural human states. They're not like
altered in the sense, yeah.
Yeah, in a way they're not. They're built into us, I think, to be able to drop into them. I had them as a kid. I found out later when I did some jhana training. I said, oh my gosh, this used to happen to me. I had very severe eczema as a kid, right through my childhood, chronic and severe, and I was sometimes hospitalized for it. And, like skin problem. And it was very, very difficult to live with, actually. It was, the itch, the pain, the burning. It was very, very difficult. But at times, usually when I was in bed at night and couldn't go to sleep because of the itching, I would suddenly find myself in this different state where it felt like I was kind of held in this sort of glowing cloud or something like that. And that all the pain and all the itching would have stopped. And it was beautiful and very, very peaceful. And when I first did jhana training, many, many years later, and suddenly the gear shifted and I was in this beautiful, glowing, peaceful state with this sort of rippling field of energy all through me. And when I described it to the trainer I was working with, the meditation teacher I was working with, I said, "Oh, hey, this thing happened that used to happen to me as a kid. It's so beautiful." And he said, "Oh yeah, that's first jhana and second jhana." You know, and so that's how I knew that these aren't artificial or something. You know, they're real deep in us. But they
Just a note on that, I think it's an important point that these actually aren't altered states. They are from the perspective of an identified conventional self, but from the perspective of our true self, these are natural states, and actually the identification with our ego and thoughts is actually the altered state.
That's beautifully put. Thank you. I exactly right on. And you know, they can get more refined. So the third jhanas, it's all about this joy and well-being. It's very peaceful. It's fourth jhana, you know, you're in equanimity and it's all pervasive. And then you get, those are the first four, and then there's another set of four that are considered the formless jhanas, because they're one is about boundless space, one is about boundless mind, and they get emptier and more refined as you go.
Could we dive into one? So boundless mind or boundless space.
Yeah.
From the subjective intrinsic experience of that, what is that experience like? How would you describe that?
Yeah, it's very beautiful. You know, boundless space. There's a sense that, you know, you can feel that from your heart outward, there's just one space, and it has no limit. And it's a very, the heart is always engaged, actually, because it's so beautiful, and you feel everything's encompassed in one great space, you know. And then boundless mind is everything's encompassed in one consciousness. It's also it's sort of moving. I find I almost get a little tearful in them because they're so beautiful. And it's amazing to me that so much peace and joy and love could come with so little. Like, it's not because you're in a, you know, much as I love a fabulous home, it's not because you're in one. You could be sitting in a hut and find this. You could be, you know, virtually penniless, and you could find such deep contentment in your very own being. I find that so beautiful.
Hey there, quick share. If you've ever landed in another country and immediately had to hunt for Wi-Fi or dealt with overpriced roaming fees, you know how annoying that can be. That's why I recommend using Saily. It's an eSIM app that gives you affordable data plans in over 200 destinations, so you can set it up before you even leave, have fast, reliable internet the moment you land, no physical SIM cards required, no airport kiosks or roaming surprises. It's all handled right from your phone, and it can be super clutch like it was for me on my recent trip to Bali. It also has built-in cybersecurity features, things like web protection and malicious ad blocking, so you're not just connected, you're protected. If you want to check it out, go to the link in the description and try Saily for your next trip. To do so, you can download Saily in the App Store or by scanning the QR code on screen. Use code KnowThyself at checkout to save 15% off your first purchase. The details are in the description. I hope you enjoy. Back to the show. Yeah, we just had one of the most prolific Advaita Vedanta teachers on, Swami Sarvapriyananda, and he was sharing about there's this great non-dual book called I Am That.
That book is actually in my loo. I read it every day. Yeah.
Oh, amazing! Yeah. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, and he had this experience where he went off to the Himalayas and had this enlightening experience and realized he doesn't need to be up there. He could go back into the slums, which is you know, stricken with poverty, and actually there is nothing wrong with it, and live the rest of his life in that place, in that state. And the deepening of these jhanas and having it more be imbibed in your day-to-day experience, home isn't a place that you try to seek externally. It becomes more and more the place in the presence you are wherever you go. And I think the most important thing on the spiritual path is to actually have a taste of this.
Yeah.
Not just reading the menu, but having the meal. It's like in the intrinsic experience of this, where it becomes self-evident. Maybe you're looking at a view, you're out looking at the horizon, and suddenly this experience of someone perceiving something outside of yourself dissolves, and it just becomes one thing, which I know you've had, obviously, I'm sure many, but earlier on as well with a sunset experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, look, we're jumping ahead a tiny bit now, because in my view, these jhana states aren't quite the same as realization, and which is the fourth in. So, but I need to get to the fourth in to explain why. I think
we'll keep on going then.
Should we do that?
Yeah. So the formless.
Yeah,
jhanas.
so the formless jhanas are that's as close as you can get to realization or awakening without awakening. Okay, that's Henry's view. And it's pretty consistent with a lot of Buddhist views as well. It's a little complex because the word samadhi has got different meanings. In the Vedic world, there are at least 3 levels of samadhi, and only the first one is the Buddhist view of samadhi, where samadhi is, you haven't yet realized, you haven't yet had realization, but you're in a very deep, beautiful state. And whereas in the Vedic view, there's the 2 other forms of samadhi are the same as realization. So you've got to just, the terminology gets a little tricky. And it also gets tricky because these are all very refined states of mind anyway. But here's the thing, in the fourth in, there's a decisive thing that happens, which you don't need to have happened for the jhana states. You've seen through your sense of self. It's not just that the sense of self has gone quiet, which it definitely does in jhana, but you've seen through it. You've seen that it was actually never here the way you thought to begin with. And this can happen, in different ways. I mean, the first thing actually I've got to say about realization is it's actually not contingent on practice, which is a pretty radical thing. You don't need to have practiced in order to have realization or awakening. You can practice a lot and not have realization / awakening. It's a different order. Now, can I tell you a quick story, personal?
Again, no. You can. Yeah, let her rip.
When I was 19, before I'd done any practice at all, I had a moment of quite significant realization, awakening, that landed on me. And I had no idea what it was, except that it was the truth. It was the truth of my life. And I was standing on a beach watching the sun go down. And I was looking at the light on the water. And I noticed that it wasn't just one brightness. It was like pieces of brightness, scales of brightness on the water, moving over this totally black surface of the water, bright and black. And I couldn't, is it bright? Is it dark? I was trying to figure it out. And all of a sudden, me and what I was looking at stopped being 2 things. There was only one world, one reality. And both the water and any sense of Henry were both that reality. So the distinction had gone. And actually, I dropped right in then to this unbounded, empty substance. There was no substance. That was what the universe was made of. And I knew to the bottom of my being, all through my bones, that I was made of the universe and I was not separate from it and never had been and never could be because we were one thing that was not really a thing. But it was absolutely one. And I sort of emerged from that, realized I was a person standing on a beach again. And then I was just enveloped by the sense of all of this whole life, this whole world, all of us, it's a dream, a most beautiful, sublime dream. And it's all made of love, like an immemorial love, just enveloped everything. And it was, I knew it was real. And I was so blown away by it that I felt I had fulfilled my life. That whatever the purpose of this life had been, which, to be honest, I had never thought about really before. I'd never really thought, what's my purpose? I'd just been following what I was told, studying and sports, gymnastics, I did whatever, But in this moment, suddenly it just was like a wave of love just enveloped me right after that experience, and it was like, I've had a purpose in this life. It was to realize exactly what I've just realized. And actually, years later, I heard Yogananda saying in an old documentary, this life is a movie. It's a motion picture. And the purpose of life is to turn around and see the projector. And when I heard that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's so beautifully put. That's exactly how I felt when I was 19 and this thing happened. But, what I really want to say is really important here for me is that actually my life didn't end then. I could have died happily that night, knowing my life was fulfilled. But it didn't end. And a few weeks later, I went back home. I'd been far away from home when this happened. I went back home, and it was when I went home that actually I got overwhelmed by the unacknowledged trauma of my childhood, which I had put a lot of effort into suppressing. I'd evolved these adaptive personalities, subpersonalities, parts, so that I could deal with the very difficult aspects of my childhood, traumatic, complex childhood trauma that I grew up with. But I'd managed to kind of avoid feeling it because it was too much through my childhood with adaptations. When I went home at 19, after this experience, all those adaptive strategies had been ripped away. I was wide open, which was very beautiful. I was so open and full of love and very aware of suffering in the streets around me. I was in South America at the time, and so on. As soon as I got home, literally almost walked through the door of my father's house, but actually an hour later, I was just overwhelmed by these terrible memories and emotions in my body of my childhood that I had not been able to feel as a kid. I'd avoided, suppressed, buried. But the awakening opened me so I could feel them. But at that time, I had no resources and I didn't want to feel them. I thought it was a catastrophe that I could be feeling these terrible things. And I thought I'd lost that marvelous awakening, and I went into despair. And I think I really feel this is a crucial part of this whole process that we humans can go through of awakening. It's also healing. It's always, I think, going to be both awakening and healing. Because for me, I was a very reluctant sort of client, patient, needer of healing. I didn't want to know about it, even then at 19. And it took me, several years, 3 years, 4 years of being really unhappy, drinking, at university and kind of dragging myself through life, gradually finding a little more joy with music. Actually, I was a musician and writing again. And, but then I found meditation. And almost as soon as I started meditating, I realized, man, I'm unhappy, and I started therapy. and I started dealing with all the trauma of my childhood. And, it's been a kind of twin journey of awakening and healing, how to live more consistently and get actually even more deeply into whatever that was that I opened up to, but also be dealing with this suffering, troubled, traumatized human being. And I think the mercy of this path is that it doesn't leave either behind.
Mm. I think a lot of us are under presumption that these two things are fused, that like the spiritual or contemplative work will solve the parts work, the healing work, the growing up.
Yeah.
And I think they are intrinsically linked, very complementary, but not the same. And it's something we talk about quite a bit because I think it's really important to have a holistic understanding of what awakening means, right? And under just the meditative contemplative lens, we can wake up beyond the idea of being identified with our thoughts and emotions. We can have these more formless jhana state experiences, and it doesn't fix the.
Yeah.
It can some ways it can make it even harder to take seriously, these like characterological stuff.
Yeah.
I think it makes it easier to work with because we're less reactive to them. In your case, it made space for that to come to the surface, right?
Yes.
But any other thoughts you have there on the importance between the two and how they're both essential, but they don't necessarily solve one another?
Yeah. I think it's really important to state like you, because I think, in a therapeutic context, I've never been in a therapeutic context that really deeply understood awakening. But they didn't really know that they didn't really understand it. And I've also been in meditative, contemplative contexts that didn't really understand trauma and thought that they were the fix for everything. So I love this. There's in early Chinese Buddhism from the 6th century, there's a document that talks about the path of practice as a cart track, not a path. We talk about often talk about spiritual path. It's the path up the mountain or something. But this idea, the cart track, says, no, it's not a path. It's a track, meaning there are 2 wheel tracks. And it says the first wheel track is the foundations of mindfulness. And by that, it means this early Buddhist training. You gradually develop your mindfulness and it expands. It gets deeper and deeper. You get into jhanas. Maybe you get realization, but it's a gradual cultivation of the human mind, body, heart system. The second wheel track, running parallel to it all along, just like a cart track, is awakening. So rather than it being a journey to the mountain, up the mountain, awakening's alongside all the way, which I think is accurate. It's also because it's always here. And it's not affected by, in a certain way, it's not affected by the practice, the gradual cultivation and development that we probably all need to do to some degree, which is a beautiful thing as well. But what happens is that the more we're working on the gradual developmental side, the more open we become to maybe having glimpses of the awakening side. The more we might glimpse the awakening side, the more space there is to work with the gradual, I call it healing side. And somehow I think this is a really helpful metaphor. It's not a single journey to the destination. In a certain way, all the old traditions are right. The destination's here all along. But to actually glimpse it and integrate it, we probably need to do all this gradual work basically on ourselves and on our relationships and on our trauma, on our history, on our collective trauma, on our ancestral trauma, let alone, of course, our personal trauma. And so I feel that coming back to purpose, I feel in some way purpose of my life anyway has been to clarify at the deepest level who I really am, but also to work through all the things that I would think of as obstacles to that because they're part of the path. They're not obstacles. They're the meat of the path. They're the nourishment of the path. It's all a trauma. Yes, my personal trauma, but also collective. And now also in a certain point in my path, it became, I was asked actually by my teachers to start sharing and teaching myself. So it's also been part of my path to be sharing this, to the best of my ability and in full humility, because I'm still a student as well.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's easy to simplify awakening to a bumper sticker, but in many ways it's been said the matured intellect is the capacity to hold paradox, conflicting ideas. And what I love the way that you phrase what you just shared is that it's like awakening is the path. It is the two tracks. It is the process. Instead of this one place you'll get to one day, it's always here. It's all inclusive. Your purpose isn't someday when or just in relation to the world, but it is your being, your presence. And I think that when you shared your sunset story, that moment of insight and awakening, like that level of fulfillment, that ontological experience of completeness, of wholeness, of undividedness, you could say is integrity also.
Yes.
The root of integrity being integritas, the undivided whole sense within.
Yeah.
And I think so much of our endeavors in life are in pursuit of that, whether or not we articulate it.
Yes.
And so I love that we acknowledge that, because the reality is it's so easy to hear this on a podcast, read it in a book, go back into our life under the presumption that things aren't the way they should be. I think this insight equips us to meet life fully and the inevitable challenges and health issues and societal troubles and suffering and samsara with an open heart and actually more capacity to be an effective agent of change in the world.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I've found on my own journey that how I show up as hopefully an effective agent of change, that's changed. That itself has changed. I mean, for example, for 10 years, I was just, hardcore running a Zen center in Santa Fe, Mountain Cloud Zen Center. I thought I'd be doing that till I died. But COVID came, the center shuttered. Right around then, I had a head injury, which really affected my cognitive capacity, actually. I also had a very difficult, situation with somebody who's very dear to me, getting into a very, 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 very challenging, long-term, life-threatening, difficult situation, which was heartbreaking. And all of these, they all happened at the same time. And I had to change how I was teaching. And that's where I came up with this terminology, original love, and that map of practice, which, of course, it comes out of the traditions, but it was a slight simplification and reforming of the view. And I couldn't, I was much less, I just had to live from my heart. I couldn't live from my head anymore because it had had a blow struck to it. And my heart had had a blow struck to it. I just had to get into my heartbreak and live from my open heart. And that's what I aspire to be doing. Really, I aspire to do it all the time.
Yeah.
I have my moments, but I have moments both ways,
Yeah.
Doing it better and worse, But that wasn't what I was doing for 10 years of teaching. Kind of some of it was there because I'd been through quite a deep other realization experience in the course of my Zen training, which was different from that beach moment. I had a number of significant milestone moments, but one of them blew everything away. It was just everything just totally gone. And thereafter, every moment being a new world, arising, and that was very heartful as well. And that's why I was asked to become a Zen teacher, actually, really, because this was a real shift. That really knocked away a lot of my, neurotic trouble. Was actually really blown away by that. And I thought that was it till I die. But I was wrong, because then this, the COVID stuff and the head injury and the heart blow, it took me to another place again, which is living from my heart fully, or aspiring to, as I said.
So there are innumerable paths to come to that realization. I'm curious, as somebody who is one of the few teachers authorized in your lineage out here in the West, and who understands through that lens more than most people, I'm curious, how would you articulate what distinguishes Zen as a path? What's truly its flavor comparatively? As there are so many different conversations and lineages and disciplines that we explore on the show, what would you say is really the heart of what distinguishes Zen as Zen and Sambo Zen?
Yeah, I'll try to do that with the caveat that I don't know the other traditions as deeply.
Yeah.
And so, because a lot of them, the deeper you go, they're so complex and there's nuances. And so I don't want to caricature any other tradition. But I'll say this about the Zen that I've been trained in. It has this view that all of us can have these moments of realization, and that's not the end, that you can get them more deeply. There's a sequence of pictures called the ox herding pictures in Zen, which mark out a path of practice and spiritual development. And, the first one, the ox herder recognizes that they've lost their ox. And so the second one, they go looking for it and they pick up the hoof prints of the ox and they follow the hoof prints. The third one, they catch a glimpse of part of the ox, like the hindquarters showing out of a bush or the horns over a fence or something. And suddenly they know there's a living being. There really is a living being. And that's a moment of realization, of awakening.
There's a there.
There's a there. Yeah. Zen calls it kensho, seeing your original nature. Kensho. Sudden, staggering moment. Oh my gosh, it's real. But it's only a glimpse and it's only part of the beast. There's a long process of training till you get to see the whole ox and you get hold of it.
You just saw the ass.
You just saw the ass. Exactly. But now you're seeing the whole thing and it doesn't go away. And that for me was what happened with that deeper experience I was talking about. It became present and accessible always. Then you train it. That's the fifth picture actually we got to. And the sixth one, you ride it home. And then the seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th, no more ox. The ox disappears from the pictures. It's become second nature. And you're no longer concerned with the journey of awakening. You're concerned with the journey of helping and of service in this world. However you may be called to express that. And I think there's such deep wisdom in that notion that actually, because it seems all encompassing to get this deep awakening and be able to live with it. That seems like a total path in itself. But Zen sort of says, no, that's a phase. And you can go beyond that. One of my Zen teachers actually is a great guy from the Philippines, Ruben Abito Roshi. He always would say, it's like Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond. And the beyond is right this here now, us having this conversation, which is both ultimate reality right here and exactly this. I'm a little bit thirsty. I'm going to have a sip of water. We're dialoguing, talking about the 10 ox herding pictures right now. Who knows what we'll talk about next? But, this is it. It's a real emphasis on not checking out. It's not a path out of the world. It's a path deeply into the world. And I think this is a really important flavor of Zen. It's not, I'm going to escape this world of suffering. No, I'm going to realize its true nature and re-enter it ever more deeply.
How do koans as a technology come into the picture here?
Thank you for asking that. I was hoping we might get to them.
Yeah, me too.
Koans, they're a distinctive feature of Zen. They're not unknown in other traditions, but let me say just a koan is a little phrase, sometimes a question, sometimes it's a phrase describing something that somebody did, from the history of Zen and early Buddhism. So you have koans from the time of the historical Buddha, and you have koans from the early great days of Zen, the 6th century, 7th, 8th, 9th centuries in China. Mostly they're from those time periods. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they kind of encapsulate one practitioner's deep awakening. But they do it in very paradoxical ways that make no sense to the intellect, to the ordinary mind. So, for example, there's a famous one. You know the sound of two hands clapping. What is the sound of one hand? What is the sound of one hand? Now, I've had people, when I was teaching with koans, people might come and go, that's the sound of one hand. No, it's okay. That's fine. Whatever you've presented something, but that's not what this koan is about.
Some people can clap with one hand too.
Yeah, right. But it's actually like it's a paradox. It's inviting us into awakening. Basically, it's what it's doing. It's inviting us into this undivided organism of this present moment, where nothing's separate. So one hand, two hands, 10,000 hands, it's actually all one. But it's inviting us to realize that for ourselves. So so that's just one example. There's hundreds of them.
What would you extract from that? What is the sound of one hand? And because as a teacher in this lineage, you've had to pass hundreds of koans to sort of be like authorized to teach in the way you do. And the way that you're describing it is like these paradoxical, puzzle-seeming, phrases don't make sense to the intellect, but they point to, once you're in the state, sort of an obvious realization becomes self-evident as to the nature it's referring to or pointing to.
Yes.
So in that example, how would you, if I was your teacher and I proposed this koan, 1,000 years ago, what would be an answer that you would give to that one?
I have to be a little careful here.
Okay.
Because we don't, there's a sort of protocol.
Okay.
of not being too public about it. I mean, we can talk about them and around them a lot, but I can tell you this. I would need to show it to you, not talk about it.
Uh-huh.
I'd need to show you. And in the way I showed it, you as a teacher would be looking to feel that I'm really presenting my realization of all the world and me as being one thing. There's nobody here. There's exactly this body, mind, heart here. And it's all inclusive. So I need to show you the sound of one hand in a way that you could feel as a teacher my realization. That's sort of the...
Yeah.
So it's a little strange because koans are words, but in almost every case, when you meet with a teacher with them, you have to embody it. And you occasionally you show it with words, but it's got to be an embodied experience. Usually you show it with something you actually do as a movement, as a gesture, as something. You usually show them with your body because they're about embodying realization. So this is actually another special feature of Zen.
It's like awakened charades.
It sort of is.
Not to bastardize a 1,000-year-old lineage, but I'm trying to picture what it means.
It can seem that way. But when you do it, when you do this presentation, this embodied presentation of it, you feel it. You feel, you're back in awakening instantly. And that's the value of this training, is that it's like, yes, you've been graced and blessed with a moment of realization, but how is it going to become part of your life, integrated into your life? And that's what the koan training is for. It's to embody it. So you don't do it by thinking about them. And, they'll thwart every avenue of thinking. If somebody's trying to understand a koan, and it's very natural, sometimes you get given one, and of course you start thinking about it, and you're meditating, thinking about it, you get nowhere, And then all of a sudden, when you're not thinking about it, you suddenly have some insight into it. and you feel it in your body, and you know what to do. And when you next see the teacher, you just do it, and you feel. This is how it's been for me in my training. You feel that you and the teacher are somehow, it's a single field. The room you're in, you, the teacher, the koan, it all becomes one. And you just know the rest of the world drops away and you got it, and then, you have a chat and you go on to the next one. And so it brings you back to embodying awakening repeatedly. And that's, I think, precious. It's something about the body being involved is so critical.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might hear koan and think of it from the way we've been trained to think of education, especially in the West. It's like a multiple choice. There's a right answer to give, right? As opposed to a phrase written in English, shared verbally, that dissolves into a state of experience that is a level of embodiment.
Beautifully put.
Well, I want to pass the baton back over to you because I think you're sharing this wonderfully. So, yeah, I would love to hear more in your experience of like how the koan as like a technology brings you into these states and these experiences and awakenings. Maybe we could share a couple more, and I'm just so fascinated.
Yeah, there's a view that there's a handful of early koans which are called breakthrough koans, and once somebody's had a significant opening with one of them, then they can start working on the whole long, there's 4 or 5 books of koans actually that we work through. So then somebody can start doing that because they've had the critical breakthrough of realization to some degree. They've got some glimpse of it. Some of those early ones are like cross traditions. Who am I? Who am I? That's taken up as a koan. Sometimes it's refined a little bit to like who's hearing, who's seeing. Who we are. We're gazing at each other as we have this conversation, but who is actually the seer? Like very clear what is being seen, but who is it that's seeing? We can ask ourselves that. Who is really here doing the seeing? And the more we look back into that, we might find it's not so easy to answer. We might find, well, there's this little sensation that I think of as me, but it's just a sensation. Or there's an idea, a narrative in my mind, a story of me, who I think I am, has been through the experiences that, this being has been through. That's me. But it's just thoughts. Who really am I? And we can ask that sort of, deeper and deeper. The lens can get perfectly aligned on this sense of me. And suddenly, boom, I don't want to say, actually, but suddenly we might just suddenly see it's not what I thought, And so that's great. And then we would come to the teacher and describe what we've experienced and say, yes, that's an important realization. Great opening you've had. Let me give you another koan. And then you'd work through all these different koans if you wanted to. One is make Mount Fuji take 3 steps.
Make Mount Fuji take 3 steps.
Yeah. So there's one. How on earth do I do that? That's crazy. But actually, after a moment of realization, we might think about it and still not really get it, but we might just know what to do. And or it might come to us. I'm going to try that. So you try that. Lo and behold, yes, the teacher says, yes, I'm seeing it. As you do that, I'm experiencing the reality of this koan. And you get it as well. Oh my gosh, I'm embodying realization in what I'm doing. So, okay, is this kind of landing? This is making some sense?
Yeah.
It's. I know it's weird. There's tons of them. There's one where there's this master called Dongshan, and the story is that he was sitting in a kind of granary in the monastery, maybe at a table counting out or weighing out hemp, and the student, it seems, the koan goes, "What is Buddha, or what is awakened nature? What is Buddha?" And Dongshan answered, 3 pounds of flax. 3 pounds of flax. So it's thought that he was probably in this granary weighing flax, and it just hit the 3 pound mark. So he just said 3 pound of flax, because it's exactly the moment that he's in right then and there. So, because it can't be something other. It's always this.
Yeah.
So, what is Buddha? Lifting glass of water. Glass 2/3 full. This is Buddha. Beautiful, actually very beautiful glass. Or it's a warm sock. It's, in other words, it's bringing us back to this moment. So here's a little point I just made to summarize this. It's like koans are not trying to get us to some other place where they are. They're an invitation pointing us back to our own experience now, always here and now.
How many koans have you passed as a part of your practice?
Well, I've been through, they say there's 670 in our curriculum. I don't know exactly if that's right, but some 600 or something. But, I've done them multiple times with different teachers. And then I've done them with students. And I've talked about all of them. So I've been kind of working with them all a number of times, not just once.
What does it feel like from the perspective of the teacher when you give a koan to a student and they pass? What does it feel like for you?
Oh, gosh, it's amazing. Because, basically it's like, most people would start like with one of those early breakthrough koans. And who knows how long they'll sit with it. But, usually what happens when somebody's had a breakthrough is that they'll come and see the teacher, and it's like they don't know what just happened. If it's on a retreat, so it's fresh, or it may have happened a week ago or something, they come in, and you can feel right away, very kind of open and light. When they walk in, you can just feel it in your own body and mind and heart. And they'll say, God, this totally weird thing happened. I mean, I can still feel it, actually. It was so strange. I don't know what it was. It's, well, tell me about it. What was it like? And they'll always have a specific time. Well, I was in the supermarket. I was in the frozen aisle. And I was just reaching for this bag of peas. And all of a sudden, it's like it wasn't me doing it. It was like the whole universe was reaching for I don't know what to say, Henry. I can't describe it. It was really like everything was there. And there was nowhere else. And it was like, this is what it had always been, just as I was reaching for the peas. I don't get it. And okay, that's a breakthrough experience, where suddenly the ordinary sense of self with its narrative is cut, is interrupted. And instead there's this infinite, boundless reality. But people will be often just really kind of like, but I don't know what it was. But when they're describing it, you can see, oh my gosh, you're seeing it's all one. There's no self. There's, it's actually maybe all empty. There's no time. There's no space. Everything's here. These kinds of things. So it's thrilling. It's thrilling as a teacher, because you realize they suddenly recognized something fundamental about who we are.
There's something very refreshing in the way that Zen phrases a lot of this path to awakening, where you're sort of, I would say literally, dying into the ordinariness of experience. Like
Yes.
a lot of, especially maybe on the more shamanic paths or psychedelic paths, even through the study of the 8 limbs or various different yogic traditions, there can be this early on presumption that like there is a state, once I achieve, I will then be enlightened, and it can almost further the perception of duality.
Yes.
And whether it's the 3 pound flax or the 2/3 cup full of water, there's something so profound in bringing this insight into the everyday, mundane ordinariness of washing dishes, of folding your laundry. And where else could it be found?
That's beautifully put. That's exactly the point. Where else could it be? It's because it's so easy for us to think it's down the road. But it can't be. Because it's only now. There is only now. There really is only now. And I was just teaching a retreat with an old dear friend and mentor of mine, Roshi Joan Halifax. And she came up with this phrase that I just love, actually. The organism of the present moment. When we join the organism of this, of now, it's undivided. It's undivided. It's all inclusive. Nothing's, in this very now here. I mean, I'm talking about this one, not some theoretical one down there. This very moment, everything's here and it's undivided. It's one reality. And, an opening, a breakthrough, a realization, an awakening is recognizing that this very now is all there is. And Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, he used to say this: there is only the present moment and everything is here. It's so beautiful. It's such a mercy because, we think we got to earn and get to this marvelous place called awakening or something, and liberation, realization. We think we got to get there and earn it. No, it's already here. It's much more about releasing, letting go, allowing, not fighting, not reaching, grasping, not resisting. It's much more about dropping stuff. The many things that we don't recognize we're carrying, ideas and body sensations, emotions, just to let it all be is actually that's what opens us up. And so I sometimes wonder with Zen and with other paths, like do we have methodologies? Try to do this. Try to focus on a koan. Try to focus on your breath just to keep the mind busy so that reality can sneak in around the back and come in and show itself. Because we're not trying to find it. We're trying to do the practice.
Yeah.
Therefore, the reality of this moment could show up.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes total sense. And I feel like many meditative practices are giving the mind, which is a dog or a monkey, a toy to chew on,
Exactly. Yeah. And then the real dog owner can show up. All of this moment.
Right.
Yeah.
And then practice becomes, and meditation becomes less of something we do, more of something we are. But the beauty of having a practice that you're devoted to and you're disciplined with allows more of these spontaneous moments to appear. Like they become, like you're providing more and more opportunities for these realizations to come in because you're less distracted with the doom scrolling and our perceived problems and all of these things.
I totally agree. And I think it's also about when you've got a path of practice, you've got something to bring them to. It's like you've already got this medium into which you can start integrating. So that's like me when I was 19. I had no path of practice to which I could bring what I'd realized. It was just this thing that had happened, but I had no way of grounding it and integrating it, And I sometimes think at times I felt, man, I'm so grateful to my path of practice for all it's given me. And I remember there was a point, 20 years ago or something, when I suddenly thought, no, I'm so grateful to my path of practice for what it's let me give it. All the things I've been able to let go of and hand over to this path of practice. That's equally valuable. That it received all this stuff from me that actually I kind of need to let go of, or I can let go of, and I didn't know I could. So it's a reduction, not an acquisition. I think that's pretty much true, actually, of this path. Yeah.
We're so programmed to view from the lens of acquisition, though.
Yes.
Like more means more things, more acquisition, more money, more followers, whatever it is, right?
Yes. Yeah, who would have thought how much we gain by losing?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's one of those counterintuitive things where it's like from that state of realization, I personally feel like there's actually nothing to gain and nothing to lose. Like
Yes.
And I find more and more freedom in making space for emptiness, both internally and externally.
Right.
Anything that doesn't serve a purpose, that isn't intentionally placed in my home, give it away, sell it, get rid of it. And and I also think of like the value of any room is actually not the stuff it's filled with, but the actual emptiness in the space of the room, which makes it so we can sit down and have this conversation. So like having that like emptiness first as a kind of viewpoint from how we build our home to even our email subscription lists, like every area of life I like the phrase reduce it to its maximum,
That's beautiful. Actually, I got to say, Andre, just, having a little glimpse of your home, it expresses that beautifully. I can feel that intentionality with everything that's present that actually helps the space to show up.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. There's that Janis Joplin song, "Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose."
Mm.
I think it's really true. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Mm.
I remember the first time I went to a retreat with my Japanese master, Yamada Ryoun Roshi. This was now nearly 20 years ago. I'd been training with my other teachers by then anyway, and they were part of the same Sambo Zen world. The first talk he gave was saying, the point of Zen is this, that we're all busy trying to get the things we want so we feel okay. And that's, of course, it's material things, but it's also relationship, it's sort of some status, nice watch, whatever. But we're trying to acquire things to be okay. The trouble with that is that we know we're liable to losing them. And in the end, with death, we know we'll lose them. We're going to lose the nice house, the lovely relationship when we die. Zen's solution is not to adjust that a little bit and try to assuage it a little bit. No, Zen's solution is to realize that we never really had them to begin with.
I love the way that's phrased. There is this the old story of Socrates going through the market at Athens and just seeing so many vendors and so many things and saying, "Who knew there were so many things in this world in which I do not need?" And like that's real power in my perspective, and it's what you're speaking to in that level of freedom. It's cool to be able to look at things from the many different lenses. Like I love the path of jnana yoga to be able to intellectually walk through this. You can get there through the intellect. You can get there through your emotions and the devotional practice, through the non-dual practices, through many different avenues. I think it's cool to also look at it from like the biological lens, how the sense of individuality, which we so strongly held the presumption of before, dissolves the more we realize we're inhaling what the trees are exhaling. They're inhaling what we're exhaling. Yes. The mycelial network that makes life possible, and it keeps on like anchoring in this insight that there actually is no strict demarcation line between self and other.
Yes,
and I know that part of why I love doing this podcast so much is because I get to talk with people that are steeped in various different disciplines that get to be an entry point to whoever might resonate with. Zen, I think, has been something that clearly, in the way that it was brought to you, just really resonated with your being. And there's so many amazing other traditions that resonate with people in different ways. And it's cool to be able to see the golden thread that weaves them all, and how they're essentially speaking about the same source of our true nature.
Yes. I know in my own case, I actually have trained in different traditions as well that I found so rich and helpful. And my first meditation path was transcendental meditation for 5 years or so. And I would have stuck with it. I loved it, except that I happened to stumble into Zen through a friend. And I knew that Zen knew about that experience I'd had when I was 19. It was like front and center in Zen. That's what Zen is really deeply concerned with, is helping us all come to a realization like that. And I'm sure I could have found that in TM. I just didn't. It was very therapeutic and kind of almost medicinal for me. And man, I needed it. But in Zen, they talked about it explicitly. No, they talked about it in poetic language that made it explicit. I knew, oh my gosh, they know about that. And somehow it's central to what they're trying to express. So that's what got me to find. And then, but since then, like I've done the jhana training, I've done, some vipassana, some mindfulness, skeptical philosophy, and I was into the Greeks as a young man. I read ancient Greek actually, and I started a PhD in ancient Greek, and so I had some grounding in the Greek philosophy and. Man, they're wild, beautiful. Yeah.
Just one more note here on the importance of sadhana, of a practice of meditation. As somebody who has, founded the Way app, which is really beautiful. The necessity in this day and age is that having a practice, like you said, allows reality to kind of sneak in through the back door. There's something inherently pleasant about the concentrated mind. And the reality is we live in an age more than ever where we have so many ways to become distracted.
Yeah.
So much technology and ideas about the world and things that are pulling us from the political lens that can, if we allow it to, pull us away from awareness of who we are. And so any other note there on how important it is for many of us to cultivate a practice of meditation, whether it's once a day, whether it's twice a day, and eventually it goes down deeper into these jhana states and where it dissolves into the awakening and it becomes less of, again, something you feel like you need to do. Yeah. I know for me early on, it was much more like of a militant practice, like I need to stick with this thing. And then it, sort of dissolves into less of a me doing a thing and it's part of the way in which you are. But somebody who's obviously such a prolific meditation teacher through your app and through in-person retreats, any words on the importance of cultivating a practice for everyone who's listening right now?
Yeah, I mean, one way I used to think about it, and I still do, and when I started out, I got this, was the sense of like, basically I want to have a shower every day. And my mind needs a shower. It needs hygiene, and it's a kind of mental hygiene to check in with myself, to give myself some space, and I could feel it as soon as I started meditating regularly. I got it. There's this kind of cleansing process that just a single sit, it may be a really distracted sit, but the fact that I sat still for 20 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever it is, and was devoted to sort of not doing anything outwardly. Yeah, my mind might have been active. It doesn't actually matter. The fact that I sat still and was kind of dedicating that little period of my day to my life, not to my activities, to my existence as a being, that provides, even if it's a very distracted sit, just a tiny grain of perspective, which is a kind of mental hygiene. And of course, if we're doing it daily with consistency, it just tiny incrementally builds on itself. And that little grain of perspective over days, weeks, months, it grows into just a bit more awareness. And you just start to feel it, and you miss it if you don't do a day. And I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of nice things, of course, people do that are kind of meditative, going for a walk in the woods. Probably great to do the sauna and cold plunge, whatever. There are things we can do that are in the same territory, but the particular value of meditation is that it's you're not doing anything. You're really just inviting being, to recognize your own being, and that has a particular kind of wholesomeness that you in yourself, you're giving yourself an opportunity daily to gradually and then sometimes suddenly, discover that you've got your very own being is already okay. Whatever turbulence and trouble maybe in your own personal world, in your professional world, in the collective that we're living in, there's still the raw fact of your own being that is deep down is okay. And meditation is helping us align with that and getting to know that. So it's I see this, with so thousands and thousands of students, that it does actually work, but you kind of need to be consistent. And it's far better to do 10 minutes a day than half an hour once a week. Far, far, far better. That's, in a way, if I just talk about the app for a moment,
Yeah.
that's why we built it, was we wanted to help people get into the daily habit. And we thought that our radical thing on our app was that there's no choice. You do not have a choice about what to do. You follow this pathway, and it's going to train you in these different ins that we've been talking about, in mindfulness, in connection, in absorption, and hopefully in awakening. And we kind of circle round through them, these 4 aspects of practice, going deeper and deeper as we go. And what our kind of philosophy was that if you know about these different benefits, it's a motivator, is to know that there are these different things that can happen, and they really do happen over time. So it actually makes sense to be on a journey that's training you in these different aspects of practice. So, number 1, there's fruits down the road, even though we're talking about they're not down the road. Actually, these things do develop over time. Number 2, we know a journey that makes sense, that's logically develops and is consistent, and you incrementally develop your practice, and we can train you on it, and it's not like you open up and there's 100 different courses you can do. No, there's one pathway. And if you just consistently follow it, you're going to start seeing different benefits in each of these different dimensions of practice development, of spiritual development that a human being can go through. So it's super simple, but it's actually deep. And we think we're still the first app that is doing this. It's not a library, it's a pathway. And people, the feedback has been insane. And our growth has been, really, really awesome. And it's very heartwarming to see that people are resonating with it in the kinds of numbers that they are. But anyway, have I gone off track? No, I think I'm still on track. This is about the path, the sadhana, the cultivation, which is valuable in and of itself, and it might open us up to the realization that's always here.
Hand in hand, I would love to get your perspective on, as you awaken to these realizations, you increase your sensitivity, so too does your capacity for noticing beauty in life.
I'm so glad you bring that up. I think beauty is critical. And actually, that's another aspect of Zen that really drew me. It totally values beauty. I don't know whether we want this, but I'm a poet. I could share a
I would
poem.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't I just share why don't I share a poem? Okay.
Would love that.
This one's called Sweeping the Yard.
Okay.
Which is kind of a Zen thing. Daily chores.
Yeah.
Elevated as, sublime, Sweeping the yard. Sweeping the yard. When I sweep the yard in the morning, I don't do it for myself because I like it tidy. I don't even do it for the yard's sake because it enjoys being clean. I do it for the shy one. I do it for the shy one who lives inside me, who loves this world better than I ever will, who has nothing to prove, whose innocence is beyond understanding, and who I only ever know in glimpses that leave me breathless with longing, with hope that goodness is still possible, is still somehow present in this world. His sweetness shines on the earth, so the earth loves itself again. He knocks away all my ideas about who and what I should be. So we pick up the broom again, he and I, and we send the old leaves skittering across the patio and the dust smoking over the tiles, and we make the little heaps that we gather in. This is how he wakes up. This is how his wakefulness turns our little yard into the bright place I call home. This is how he wakes up. This is how his wakefulness turns our little yard into the bright place I call home.
Beautiful indeed.
Sweeping the yard.
I found poetry obviously has this capacity to speak to reality in a way that prose can't quite make contact with, right? So, such is the nature of metaphor, analogies, and story. And I wanna continue to get your perspective on the heart of that poem as it relates to our ability to notice beauty in life.
Yeah.
Like that capacity and sensitivity radically changes the more that we start to get beyond our own dramas in our head.
Yeah.
And that, of course, has many different implications on what we think we need to do, should do, must do in order to extract joy, beauty, love from the external world, right? You're inherently recognizing it in the very thing in front of you as you. So any other words on beauty?
Yeah, it's like, it's like if we can unplug from our surface life where we're desperately trying to manage things. We've got some notion of this line that we're living, this linear time line that we're on, and we got to get to that, and we got to avoid all these other things we don't want. If we can that's just a construction. And if somehow we just drop a tiny bit below the surface of that, we find beauty here and now waiting to show itself. And you can find it in the strangest of places. I've found it on a freeway, just driving along and, I just want to get to the exit, 50 miles away and get to my destination or something. No, just sitting in this vehicle, the hills, the other cars with other people in it, the shine on the surface of the road, the shine on the steering wheel. It's actually all pouring into existence, being this very moment here and now. And it's beautiful. It's not exclusively nature. Of course, nature is an obvious place where it's easier for us to find beauty. But I think the key is that it's, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that it's here to be seen. And it's just whether we can just get that little bit of release from our attachment to the surface life. Just drop an inch or a foot or a meter deeper. And we find that there's this part of us that intrinsically recognizes beauty in the world.
Huh.
I find it amazing that we do have the experience of beauty, because it's like, what's the evolutionary advantage of that? I mean, maybe I guess there could be a reproductive one for sure,
Yeah.
but we don't just limit it to other potential reproductive mates. We see it in the world. Why? And there's a great nature film I once saw where there's this line of like 4 or 5 big gorillas sitting, staring at a bush. And they're just sitting there captivated. And what is it? It's a little beetle, bright green, traveling from leaf to leaf across this bush. And all of them are just staring at it. Like, is that, primate experience of beauty? I don't know. But it sort of looks like it could be.
Yeah.
I think there's stories of chimpanzees going to a waterfall and just gazing at it. It's a special place and they recognize it, I think we've got an inherent capacity to recognize something about our relationship with this world and appreciate our participation in it, and it shows up as beauty. And I think it's kind of important. They say that the journey of Zen, actually, it began in India, where the fundamental question was what is all this? It moved to China, where the fundamental question in the Confucian society of the day was how to govern, how to organize society harmoniously. And you can see some of that reflected in, like, Koans are somehow trying to recognize our participation in the wholeness of experience or something like that. Then it goes to Japan, among other places, and in Japan, the question was, what is beauty? And there's so many ways: tea ceremony, calligraphy, landscape painting. True, it came from China as well. But in Japan, it got refined even further. Beauty matters, and it doesn't mean being able to buy expensive things. That's the beauty of this world. Standing in the sunset, looking at that reddish hue on the green hill that develops. Being out, almost every morning I go out early and watch dawn come. And it always blows my mind. How can something this beautiful be, no matter what the disasters in the world going on, and the crazy politics and the machinations of war and trade war and all the things going on, there's still this beauty. And it's totally free. Nobody can buy it. Nobody can sell it. Nobody can own it. And yeah, I live in a beautiful place, Santa Fe, right now. But I see the beauty of dawn kind of wherever I am. Walk out before it comes and just see the early light arriving. The clouds, the way they look at the end of night with light coming, shadows suddenly appearing. It's a display of just such extravagant beauty. And you can't buy it. And it's kind of amazing to me that the gift that's given of beauty every day.
Yeah, it goes from this experience we have maybe with only the natural world of like a big waterfall or the northern lights or a extravagant sunset that lights up the clouds, to increasing our sensitivity to for me in the tea ceremonies, it's like the smoke that comes off the cup and the tea leaves that are swirling around at the bottom, and something so simple, so small can be filled with so much.
Yes.
That's an incredibly obviously beautiful place to live life from, because it changes your orientation towards life when you move from that place of fulfillment and recognition of beauty. And it also, I think, rewires our notion of ethics, because I think that historically, like, ethics are something that needs to be taught from the outside in, rather as seen as an extension of yourself. Like when you experience the self as other, you don't need to be taught to not harm it. In a similar way, you don't need to be taught to cut off your own hand, right?
Yes.
And so I think sometimes some of these teachings can be perceived, well, like, okay, then what about all the horrific things that are happening on the world and the list of all the corrupt leaders that are coming out and the genocides and all these things?
Yeah.
And at least in my experience, and I'm curious to hear yours, this insight does not remove you from involvement towards very needed humane rights and action in the world, but rather it can actually allow you to meet it more fully and be more equipped.
That's beautifully put. I totally agree. I think they often say in Buddhism, like the two wings of practice are wisdom, which can mean insights in all kinds of ways, such as we've been talking about, and compassion. And, we might say realization and love, and wisdom and love, and that love is the call that, precisely as you've said, that comes from our recognition of our non-separateness. The beautiful thing about these realization experiences, when they happen, is that you can't get one without realizing that you're part of it. It's not like you see it the way you see other things. It's not like, there's a beautiful painting, now I'm seeing it. Or, there's that power station, actually, and in the sunset it's looking so beautiful. It's not like that. It's you're part of it, you're implicated. So that, with that said, it is exactly natural that you start to feel love for the world. And actually you feel the sufferings of the world more intimately, but you're more resourced. You've got a capacity for because the heart is open. And compassion is a motivating thing. They talk about the difference between, there's some research on this, between empathy and compassion. Empathy is feeling with, which is obviously a beautiful thing to do, but it's not motivating. Compassion is motivating, energizing. Compassion actually is a positive emotion. Yeah, we care about the suffering that we may see going on, but we're motivated to help. And that's a positive thing, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
I think that's intrinsically what all of this is about.
I've heard you talk about the distinction between breaking your heart, opening your heart, and the whole heart. And I think that goes hand in hand here, because there's no shortage of heartbreaking things when we turn on the news. And then in our own various moments of our life, we're going to have those moments where our heart breaks.
Yeah.
And I would love to just hear your thoughts on the progression there.
Yeah, actually, I'm tempted to offer another shorter poem, if I may.
I love it.
Which is about heartbreak and how, well, you'll see that it's what a difference, how it can change us in actually be, they talk about post-traumatic growth. And I think heartbreak can be taken that way. This poem is called Frozen Lake. And the image in it is of a frozen lake, that we can walk across or maybe fall through. So that's the notion in the poem. And it's got a little epigraph, which, like a little quote at the top, which is from a Sufi poet and wise fellow called Sheikh Abu Sa'id, who called himself Nobody, Son of Nobody. And the quote is, Allah says, God says, the broken ones are my beloved. Frozen lake, the broken ones are my beloved. When I think of friends who've been through the worst, through the dread love lives with, through the terrible fear anxiety can only dream of, I feel sorry for the rest, for those who had it all as they'd hoped, who crossed the frozen lake from one side to the other, never guessing the great dark beneath. But those for whom the lake cracked and opened, who fell into its unspeakable night while still walking upright in the light of this world, whose hearts burst and met its waters, for them there is no consolation, nor is any needed. Nor is any needed. That's about being cracked open, about the heart breaking and therefore breaking open. It's really about, in a sense, trusting grief. You know, grief is a thing all of us naturally don't want to feel because it's so painful. When we have the cause of grief in our personal lives, people we love very much going through very hard times, losing people, we may have grief. Some people have climate change grief. Some people have what they call polycrisis grief. The world is in all these different crises folding upon one another. Why not? Why wouldn't we have grief around it? You know, but if we trust grief rather than try to avoid it, it can be a doorway that opens us up even more. So the broken heart can become an open heart. In other words, the pain of heartbreak, if we don't resist it, if we surrender, it can open the heart. And then, the heart's more tender and it's going to feel more, but it's open. And when the heart is open, we're alive. We're really alive. We're really feeling this life. You know, if a life without feeling, it's not a full life. And when our heart is open, we know, sort of, this is my real life. You know, and that leads to a whole heart. We become wholehearted. And I don't know that we can get to wholehearted, I don't know, without heartbreak. Maybe we can, and I don't know it. But for me, heartbreak has been, maybe it's been the great teacher, you know, in different ways at different points in my life. And I've been very resistant to it. I've been partially open to it, or I've been wide open to it.
It seems like there is this inherent feeling that breaking open our heart, it's a death of sorts. And so much of our fear in life is the fear of death of some form, whether it's our physical body, whether it's an identity, who we thought we were, what we thought something would be, a relationship or family situation. And I'm curious how you think about death and heartbreak and how they go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful point, a beautiful observation. I guess I feel that we go through many deaths. You know, maybe some say we dying a death each moment. You know, I know that I've been, you know, looking back on my life, I see, there've been chapters. There have been chapters, and in a certain sense, the time each chapter ended, it was a kind of death. There's also, you know, I think I referenced this a tiny little bit before, but there was a moment in my Zen training when I definitely seemed to go through some kind of something that was more of a kind of annihilation than I'd ever been through before. And in that moment, the very one who'd been seeking enlightenment or seeking awakening just was totally gone. And along with that one, everything was just gone. There was just nothing, actually. It was really, and there was nobody seeing the nothing. There was no seeing of the nothing. There was just nothing. And in that nothing, I only recognized it after. It was like I went through this. It wasn't an experience, in a sense. It was a kind of ending of experience. And then after it, kind of very disoriented sort of pieces started coming back, and for days afterwards, the only thing I could say was thank you. And obviously I didn't physically die, clearly, but there was a more thorough kind of death of something than I'd ever experienced before or since. And it was a turning point in my practice. It was after that I was no longer sort of in it, out of it, in it, out of it. You know, I got it, I lost it. That was over with that moment, because the person who had been trying to have a good practice and be more awakened and recognize sometimes I'm awake now again. Oh, I'm more deluded now. That person had gone. And there just was no need to try to be more this or more that or anything, because that was all gone. So that was, to me, I guess that was the real fruit of my Zen training for me, was that actually happened. And until that moment, I'd always thought, yeah, clearly, you know, I'm really lucky. I've been graced with some of these moments of awakening, you know, and I've had great teachers, but I'm never going to be like my teachers, because I still default to, or at least repeatedly come back to this traumatized mess, you know, maybe slightly less of a mess, but, you know, somewhat prone to anxiety, stressing about stuff, fretting about stuff. I keep coming back to that, even though I can also recognize, you know, something boundless and beautiful and vast. But after that moment, it wasn't like that anymore. It was no longer back and forth. It was no longer wanting some state over another state. It just was sort of gone. And I know that I don't really want to claim anything with this, because I'm, you know, still a mess. You know, I'm still doing my work. But it was really decisively different. And I think there's a saying in Zen that the real way is beyond being caught in the many things and being awakened. The real way is beyond both of them. It's not about one or the other. It's beyond and includes both. And this is important for that cart track metaphor as well. It's not one or the other. It's both, you know. And they say that first there's the 10 trillion things, and then we see that they're all empty and one. But that's not yet the end of the path. Maybe, sure, there's no end. But the 10 trillion and the empty oneness, they're exactly the same thing. And until they're exactly the same thing, there's some kind of duality between them. You know, initially there's the duality of everything being separate from me and everything separate from other things. With awakening, that duality is gone. We discover the non-duality. Somehow all things are encompassed by one great awareness, non-dual. But we'll still usually, most of us, have a duality between recognizing that and being back in the old view. Back and forth, back and forth. I want to get that all the time. Keep practicing. And eventually, the second duality between awakened awareness and non-awakened awareness, that can be gone. That's very, very beautiful. It's very, very beautiful to find that there's this, you know, it's unnameable. It's indeterminate. You could say it's totally empty, but on the other hand, it's all things. You could say it's all of this just as it is, but on the other hand, it's utterly empty. And you can't choose between them. It's so beautiful. And for me, in so far as there's still the thread of biography that I can recognize, that was a total turning point to somehow drop into that. Again, it wasn't an experience I had. It was somehow an ending of experience. And it's all been a little different since then.
Yeah,
say that, yeah.
I think it goes hand in hand with the sometimes often overused analogy of the chrysalis and the caterpillar and the butterfly, right? Like there is the death, the transmutation, the ending of one form we're taking into this goo of unknown, of nobodiness,
Yes.
into whatever is going to emerge next, trusting that life is way more intelligent than we could ever, choreograph in our own minds.
Yes.
That it knows what it's doing. I also think about the sometimes the paradoxical contemplation on the progressive path of awakening versus the direct path. You can have direct insight, and yet it seems like we have this meditation practice. It seems like we're doing this to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And I love the Zen phrasing of water heats gradually and boils suddenly. That
Yeah.
like we have these little moments and these mini awakenings and ahas and realizations and insights into reality until the point where the water boils, and then it stops becoming a duality that we return to. Yeah, there's so much here. I feel like we could talk for days and days, and I'm sure this is the first of many conversations that will to come. I'm curious though, as we start to wrap up, take your time to think on it if you want. But if you had 60 seconds to share a core message, one truth to the heart of humanity, what comes to mind?
You are love. You are love. You know that movie, I don't know how big it is in the US, but there's a UK movie called Love Actually. I don't know whether you know that one. It was.
Yeah, I think I might have.
It's got some stars in it. I think I can't remember their names. Hugh Grant's in it, I think, and Emma Thompson, and some of those British stars, and a few American stars as well. Love Actually, and I've always thought, why is it called Love Actually? And it suddenly came to me, maybe it's the answer to a question: what really matters? Love Actually, or what's it all about? Love, actually. What is our purpose? Love, actually. Like, it's almost like we're reluctant somehow to say it. Sort of tiptoe around the word love, because of course it can mean so many things and it's got so many associations, but fundamentally, what if, what in the end we really are is love?
It's been a beautiful through line throughout this whole conversation, and I think conversations and messages like you share so often about our true nature being that original love is it's really something that we need to hear, I think, now more than ever, as there's just increasing moments of depression, anxiety, meaning crisis, loneliness, epidemics. We're constantly reminded of our fracturedness, our fragmentedness, our separateness. So, I highly recommend anybody who's listening, if they want to stay connected with Henry's work, check out the Way app, go on that journey of those insights and meditations. Any other thoughts you want to share and where people can stay connected with you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's curious, I got this book that's a kind of storyline of my own path of practice called One Blade of Grass. And there's the book Original Love, which is speaking to a lot of this as well. And the wayapp.com has all you need on the app. But above all, try to just give yourself 10 minutes a day of stillness and quiet. And if our app helps you with that, fantastic. If another app does, fantastic. If no app does, fantastic. Just being still and quiet every day for that little bit of gradual lessening of stress, softening the body, letting go. It'll change a life for sure. And if more of us are doing it, it'll change the world.
Henry, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to connect. I'm looking forward to hopefully joining you in meditation on some of your retreats one day, diving more into your work, maybe pouring tea for you. Would love that.
I would absolutely love that, Andre. It's been a great joy and an honor, privilege to get time with you like this. Thank you.
Likewise. Everybody who's tuning in to this episode, I'm curious. Let us know in what ways this episode has resonated with you. I think there are various conversations on this podcast that feel they have like a different energetic kind of resonance to them. And they're speaking to aspects of self beneath the analytical, and they're more of heart shares. And I think that was self-evident in the way that you shared and also through your poetry. So big fan of this episode. And until next time, be well. Take care.